Yo, 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 what's good, YouTube? What's good? This is Stormy B Man, and I am back. Welcome to another edition of the Kung Fu Film Focus, where tonight we're going to go over a nice little joint from 1976 called the 18 Bronzemen. Now, the 18 Bronzemen is a film that was made under the the Taiwan film company called Hunghwa International Films. This Taiwan company produced a lot of kung fu films from the late 60s on through the ending era of kung fu for the early to mid 80s. Now, most of those productions found director Joseph Koo filming, writing, and directing these joints. Joseph Koo was he was a prolific director, a lot like the Taiwan's Chang Cheh. The gentleman made so many films over the years, and a lot of classics that you would recognize as far as the titles of these films. I'll drop some of them because there were films that were, I'm trying to think of how I could say this where people will be able to relate. There were films that he directed, like Shaolin Iron Man, which was one of the early kung fu bashers from the 70s. And his films were always set in these little towns and villages where if you watched a number of the films, you know they use the same sets over and over again, sort of like the Shaw Brothers, but they weren't as adept as redressing their sets. So you could watch 2 or 3 of his movies in a row, and I guarantee you one of those sets will turn up in 2 of the films. But he also had real martial artists playing in the films that he produced. His filmography saw him as a director of over 70 films, a producer over 25, and where the original story, he wrote 4 films, and regular writing credits, he's accredited to over 23 films. And he is one of the guys that, again, started early in the martial art film genre. If you go back to the late 50s, he would direct a lot of opera films. But when he began to do the kung fu films and swordplay films, it started right around, I want to say, approximately 1970, 1971. He produced films like The Mighty One, The Evil Karate, Death Duel, Triangular Duel, Chinese Iron Man, and then a few films that started to go toward the Shaolin type of storytelling, which is what we're talking about right now tonight. The 18 Bronzemen, which is also known under the title 18 Bronzemen of Shaolin. And this is a film that had a number of stars that you could recognize. You had Carter Wong Ta and Polly Shan Kwang Ling Feng. Polly Kwan she was a little small woman in size and stature, but she could fight with the best of the men on film. And she made a number of films in Hong Kong and Taiwan, and people really appreciated her because often she would play a role that would have her mimicking being a young boy, a young man. And it wasn't because of her looks, because Polly Kwan, when she was a young woman, was very attractive, but they would dress her in men's robes and everything and not put the same type of makeup that you would make up for the ladies. And her fighting prowess was A1. As these people came together to make films like what we have here tonight, 18 Bronzemen, their skills and the techniques that they showed on screen were very, very new for the audiences of that era. Shaolin films didn't take off big time until 1978, when Lau Kar-yang and Shaw Brothers produced Master Killer, 36th Chamber of Shaolin. That was the film that really kicked off the Shaolin era. However, 18 Bronzemen was a nice precursor to that. There was another star who played in this film, Tien Ping. Tien Ping, along with Carter Wong and Polly Kwan, they produced action in this film that at that time was kind of new as well. This film depicted the Shaolin disciples going through their daily rituals, training in Kung Fu, but Tien Ping, his character was the lead character of the film. Pictured here, you see him and Carter Wong with the long hair. This duo became buddies in the Shaolin Temple, where Tien Ping, his grandma had brought him to the temple as a little boy, hoping that he could learn Shaolin Kung Fu to take revenge for his parents, who were brutally murdered by a vicious clan. Now, entering the temple as a little boy, he was given a jade amulet, and he was told that when he finished his studies at Shaolin, that he could find himself going to he could find himself leaving the temple to go and study. Who took out his parents, and somewhere along the way the amulet would come into play, and whoever he crossed over with that amulet was someone he was supposed to team up with to find the murderers of his parents. So he spent approximately, I guess the way they were trying to portray it, it was like he spent approximately 10 to 15 years in the temple. Now, this is like a basic Shaolin Kung Fu revenge story. And you could see these films pretty much always have the same pattern or similar pattern. And the most important part of understanding this was what was happening in the Shaolin Temple while he was developing his skills. Going through the 18 Bronzemen, that was the trial that fighters would have to do or go through in order to leave the temple. So the film has a build-up where they're showing you them studying their skills and arts in the temple. And then they also show you the brutal effect it has on your body. Some students die from the trials. Some students are crippled. Some students are tremendously beat down. All of this, and most of the students were just there to develop themselves and become better fighters and things like that. Not necessarily wanting to leave the temple, but just embracing Shaolin Kung Fu itself. So as they did this, Tien Ping and Carter Wong, they decided that they would look out after each other in the temple. They were joined by another student in the temple, Kong Nam. Kong Nam is also a veteran of many Taiwan martial art films. He even had a starring role in one of the films. It was called Revenge of Fist of Fury, where he played in the title role of the student of the Ching Wu martial arts school, and he had to avenge his master and also students' deaths as they were brutalized by Japanese villains and rival schools. Kang Nam in this film is playing a brother in the temple along with Carter Wong and Tien Ping. As this trio began to study, you begin to see them and the advancement of their skills. Skills of strength, agility, endurance, all are a part of their training. There's one wicked part where they have to sit inside of one of those huge gong bells that the temples have, and they ring them with the big, it's like a big log or something. They swing it back and forth to make the bell gong. They have to sit inside the bell on their knees, legs folded, and in a prayer position while the gong rings, and it's so loud that it can make your ears bleed, things like that. It's like real physical, grueling training. And what that's supposed to entail is, like, when you go through that, you're supposed to have a bit of, you build up your endurance and your resistance and your focus. That's what that's about. I'm sorry about that. So, as they go through these trials, the 18 Bronzemen are supposedly former students who are now masters in certain skills, and their bodies have become embraced in bronze, covered in bronze, and the skin is supposed to be as tough as metal. Weapons can't harm them, and they have super feats of agility, martial ability, and endurance themselves. And so when fighters and students from the temple decide that they want to try themselves with the 18 Bronzemen's trials, they often find themselves going up against several of the 18 Bronzemen. It's not that it's just 18 of them, but it's 18 trials. And each trial could contain multiple Bronzemen. The Bronzemen can be like, anywhere between 7 or 8 of them. And each level, when you go through them. And it's not levels like going up a tower or something, but it's like each section of the temple where these guys host. Some of them are weapons experts. Some of them are fight experts, hand-to-hand combat. Some of them offer other tricky trials and everything. And so the film kind of takes you through that process. It's really, the effects for the time are kind of cheesy. And these fighters and these various martial artists who are training to try to get out of the temple, they're placed in these trials, and fighters come together, and the martial arts are a little bit crude. I mean, at that time, the best of them, the choreographers, they weren't as fluid as some of the guys who you would see come along later, like Sammo Hung and Lar Kao Yang and Lar Kao Yang. These guys who could really do the business, in front of the camera and behind the camera. So it was like a huge beginning core for these men. Now, three of those choreographers we have, I'm sorry, two of those choreographers we have were very they were very popular behind cameras in Taiwan. And these guys gave us great kung fu films as the years passed by. And the three guys are Cliff Locke, who's pictured center here, and Wong Fei Long, and Chen Xiaoping. Chen Xiaoping is pictured on the right. Wong Fei Long is pictured on the left. And these guys would produce choreography for these films behind the scenes. They're very familiar. Some of them have played villains in films. Cliff Locke in the center there has played sidekicks. He started out with the Shaw Brothers as a bit actor, and you've seen him in a number of Shaw Brothers films, Swords films primarily. When he was very young, he got his break with the Shaws, and then he later, as the kung fu film genre grew, Cliff Locke would play in other films. He is very popular for films that he did certain kinds of styles of kung fu, because he was a real martial artist in real life. Films like Choi La Foot and what was it? There were a number of films that Cliff Locke played in. I'm trying to think of the titles as I talk about him. He was also an action director for a number of films. You know, he played in he played in films like Shaolin's Tiger's Claw with Shi Ken, who played Han in Enter the Dragon. He played in Men on the Hour, the Shaolin Kids, the Kung Fu Genius, which was one of his most famous roles, because he in the Kung Fu Genius, he played an martial artist who could study other guys' style and master it better than them, and he'd go and challenge guys like that. It was a pretty good film. And then he was also in a very popular film called Duel of the Seven Tigers. Cliff Locke was very popular. He had that kind of pudgy face and kind of like a Jackie Chan or whatever. But his martial arts ability was very real. And even today, he still teaches martial arts. And was not one of those guys to be messed with, because he really knew his stuff. But as we get on about the 18 Bronzemen, what I also wanted to share with you about this film, as they began to work together, these Taiwan actors and martial artists, they found ways to incorporate what would become popular at a later time. The special effects of going through the temple, the Bronzemen, because some of the films would use Bronzemen as robotic people, or like these horses or dummies that had wooden extremities. They weren't people, but it's like you had to go in there and face out, and they would spin and turn and stuff like that. It was something that was very popular in that era. Everyone tried to copy one another, but try to do it a little differently. You know, talking to you guys about these films, it's like sometimes I have to pause because I'm trying to remember certain points. I didn't write my notes down tonight. Forgive me for that. But just going on the fly, man, it's like I knew so many of these films and knew them well. very much. We got a few brothers out there in the chat. I want to take a moment and acknowledge you. We got Dark Truth. He says, yo. Michael Johnson, Boxing Talking More, says, what it do? What's good? Derek McGee is saying, salute family. Boxing Conversations with Reggie Owens saying, salute my peoples. Hustler Slims saying, salute to all. And Derek Bailey says, salute Stormy B-Man. I appreciate you brothers coming out to listen to Stormy talk about these Kung Fu movies, man. I haven't done a Kung Fu joint in a minute. So, you know, it's like this is a film that there's not a lot of special information to add on it, but it's important for the genre because it was the first of its kind. And if you ever get a chance to watch 18 Bronzemen, there's nothing stellar that stands out about it, but it's the whole principle, because nothing like this was done before it was made. There are a number of people who have seen this film and thought that it was kind of weird, because when you see all these men, you know, in the Shaolin Temple, they're like a bunch of students. They're doing these kata and training and brutal trials and things like that. It's like, wow, why these guys go through that crap? You know, it's like, that's crazy as hell. But you have to understand that in China, back in that time, a lot of the men, they didn't have a sense of value or pride unless they felt a part of something like this. And the Shaolin Temple was supposed to teach you structure, discipline, give you a sense of virtue and things like that. And through study of physical exertion, you know, you're getting your body in shape. Those were the things that were important. And even in real life, the Chinese felt like that because of the invaders, people always coming across, you know, China, the Manchus, the Japanese, the Germans, even the British. You know, they were constantly under attack by waves after waves of people from another land. And their life was not considered to be worth much. And so you had men who would go to Shaolin Temple, learn how to fight, and come back and defend their villages and start militias to defend the land and country. So quite naturally, you could understand that someone who's being suppressed, and people who have been under suppression for a long time, they look for ways to fight back and get their justice. And the Shaolin Temple was a place where men would come together and get that honor together so they could go out and fight in the world. Yeah, that's one of the things that's really important to know. And sometimes when you're watching these films, we think about it being hokey because we see them doing these weird things as far as Kung Fu and how they fought and stuff like that. But in real life, nothing short of a sword or a bullet could stop these men, because they became very strong. They became very willful and determined and physical, you know. And there are a number of men in the history that these films cover, and some names are very familiar as they come back again and again, because they became noteworthy of legend. And these films actually tell the story of some of these characters that play in these films are real life, true people whose story have been fictionalized. And that's one thing about Kung Fu films, is like when they're done well, even if the special effects may be a little hokey or something, you could still sit through them because there's something about that sense of honor and brotherhood that resonates not just from there, but across the world. Something that you can readily identify with. Depicted here in this one photograph that I have posted here is one of the trials that the character played by Tian Ping, the guy who was sent to the Shaolin Temple as a kid. And I think they kept him distinguished in that by not making him bald, because most of the Shaolin monks are bald. So he kept his wig on, as a man to distinguish who you're looking at. Because Carter Wong did shave his head for this role in the film. He did parade around as a bald monk. And Tian Ping is in this particular sequence is taking on some Bronzemen who have weapons. And that's, again, one of those trials. You could see the den or the hall that they're battling in is just like a concrete chamber. Okay? And these Bronzemen, they're supposed to have impenetrable skin and things like that, which, of course, for theatrical purposes, it hypes them and makes them, more super-like. But in Shaolin, there were men who studied the invincible skin. Basically, they would use herbs and chemicals to make the skin and flesh as tough as leather. And even swords were sometimes known to not cut or slice, depending on what kind of angle they're hit from or whatever. But no one was ever totally invulnerable. The invulnerability works for theatrical purposes, but we all know that, you pull out a gun and that ends everything right there. So that's one of the things I wanted to note about that. And the Shaolin films were always depicting their warriors as people who could take as much punishment and dish out as much punishment as humanly possible. Being made in 1976, this film had one of the jumps on the genre because, as we later saw with Gordon Liu in Master Killer, aka 36 Chambers, you saw him doing some things that were like you hadn't seen much before. And that was like going through the training sequences and learning the various styles from the monks who were teaching those chambers, and him growing as a student, taking you step by step by step. That was one of the great things about 36 Chambers, because when he left the Shaolin Temple to go out into the world to do good, you felt for Gordon Liu because you know what he had gone through and his trials. 18 Bronzemen kind of glazes over that. They don't go as in depth with what was happening with Tian Ping's character and Carter Wong. They just kind of expect you to know that these guys, they did face some trials. They persevered and came through. Now they're out in the world to take revenge, and you don't really care for them, as characters. They didn't stretch that part of what they were doing out enough. But that's why I said, like, every time that one of these kind of films came out in Hong Kong, they were very popular, but someone always sought to either copy that narrative or build and make it better. And we did have a couple of sequels after this. We had 18 Bronzemen Part 2, and then we had the 8 Masters, which was actually considered 18 Bronzemen Part 3 because it retained a lot of the same actors, including Carter Wong, in both sequels, where he played different characters. I believe in 18 Bronzemen Part 2, if not Part 3. I don't remember off the top of my head right now. His character was like an emperor or something like that, but he returned for the sequels. Carter Wong was a good martial arts film actor. He first came on the scene with Golden Harvest, and it was shortly after Golden Harvest broke away from Shaw Brothers, and he was signed up as one of the young talents that they would used to feature in their films. In his early career, he appeared a lot with Angela Mao Ying, and he either played a brother in arms or a brother disciple of the school, or even a man who would cross paths with her, and they made for a good tandem in the martial art films. Carter Wong is noted for films like Hapkido, When Taekwondo Strikes, The Opium Trail, and The Tournament, and Skyhawk, where he played with Angela Mao. Then he had other films where he had starring roles, where he played like in Marco Polo, which was a Shaw Brothers film, and The Dragon Tamers, again with Golden Harvest, The Association, and Shaolin Kung Fu Mystagogue. You know, Carter Wong played in a lot of Shaolin films, and I think it was because of his martial style, which was kind of like a Tai Chi and a hard iron fist type style. And you could even see when they would show close-up of his hands, Carter Wong had those kind of protruding knuckles with calluses where you could tell he was always practicing his fist style on something. And he looked very formidable, and he's still around to this day. Carter Wong is one of the greats from martial films. And he became a villain later in his life. One of my favorite films of his is The Fatal Flying Guillotines, where he's in there with Chen Sing, and he's like a warrior from the Shaolin Temple who is trying to find out what happened to his dad. And Chen Sing is playing this master who uses these dual guillotines, and he slices people's heads off. And they have this tremendous showdown at the end of the film, Carter Wong and Chen Sing. And Chen Sing is playing like an old hermit. And when you come on his land, he tries to kill you with his guillotines and stuff. And Carter Wong was brought to there for various reasons. And great fight took place between them. It had me laughing when people are trying to run away from the guillotine, and Chen Sing is chasing them around, and he's throwing that guillotine at their head to chop their heads off. That's a funny film. Maybe I'll do a kung fu review on that film in the future. But back to 18 Bronzemen. Once Tien Ping and Carter Wong leave the temple in pursuit of the people who killed Tien Ping's family as a boy, it's a clan of people, so it's like they're still around. But they run into this young person played by Polly Kwan, and at first she comes across as like a boy again. That's how they had her in the film. But they soon realize she's a woman, you know, and she has that other amulet that Tien Ping's character is carrying, that his grandma left him with as a little boy. And remember, the promise was, if you come across somebody who has the other half of the amulet, that person is destined to help you fight this clan. And it was something similar, like a separated at birth kind of thing, where she studied martial arts too in her own way, but they didn't cover that in the film. But she was promised the same as Tien Ping's character was promised, to find the person who has the other half of the amulet, where they could go and take care of the villainous clan that took down their families. And so Carter Wong is like the senior brother from the temple who decided to go along with Tien Ping to help him. and then they're soon joined by Kong Nam, their brother in arms in the temple, who actually turns out to be a traitor, and he's trying to kill them. So it's like, it's kind of tragic when you find out that Kong Nam was a backbiting traitor, because they had developed a great rapport in the school. That's one of the things that they did share and stretch out as far as storytelling, how these three brothers in the temple, that they ate together and they, trained together, and they were trying to do some great things. But man, in martial art films, there's always a betrayal taking place, an ambush taking place, a backstabbing taking place. It's got to be. It's just one of the plot lines that's in a kung fu film. It's always that way. And that, and it's fine, because that it sets up a reason why you have action. It's like somebody's got to get in a fight now. Somebody's got to get their ass whooped now because they, cut somebody, or stabbed them in the back, But here you go. Now, here's another shot. But this shot here is not necessarily from 18 Bronzemen. I think it's from 18 Bronzemen Part 2. But for some reason, and I think it's because it's the same film company that produced both films, and I think they produced the sequel fast in a way because the first film was successful. It often gets mixed in with some of the photos from the original film. And I just decided to include it here because it's a cool shot of Carter Wong taking on Bronzemen in another cellular area, concrete cellular area. So that's why I put it in there. But yeah, 18 Bronzemen is an outstanding kung fu film to check out, just if you're a kung fu film enthusiast, because it has a number of training sequences, martial sequences where they're pitting their wares and fighting. And then when you see Polly Kwan come on scene, she's always worth a gaze, because she could not only fight, but she handled herself very well. She fought like a man, basically. And in real life, she studied martial arts. And in real life, to this day, she's an older lady now, but she talks with a lot of spunk. You could tell she's a fighter. She liked to fight. She liked to whoop ass, even in this day. There's a documentary on female kung fu stars called Top Fighter 2, and you could pick that up on Amazon. I picked the DVD up, and it covers all the popular female martial artists from the early 70s on through the 80s up until like people like Cynthia Rothrock and everything. And they have interviews with Angela Mao, Judy Lee, Polly Kwan. And when they talk to Polly Kwan, she sounds like she's ready to fight right now. She's like almost to a point where you wonder if she ever married or whatever, because it's like she had that edge like a tomboy. But she was very good at what she did. Very entertaining personality, both on screen and off, especially in her interview with Top Fighter. So if you haven't had a chance to check that documentary out, please do. It's kind of worth the while. As I mentioned, 18 Bronzemen spawned 2 sequels, and it was produced by the same film company and had pretty much the same actors returning. One of the things that I liked about films like this is that some of the familiar faces that appear in the film, you could see them as you could see them as fighters, you could see them as henchmen, and you could also see them in reverse roles. Like in one film, they may have been a good guy. In the next film, they were the bad guy. So that's one of the things that they would do with these people and personalities who would play in these films. There was so much that you could see take place like that in this film. There's a lot of familiar faces. A lot of familiar faces. So, one of the things that I'd like to recommend to you all, if you haven't seen this film, is to check it out and then check out the 2 sequels. Because the 2 sequels give a little bit of what was missing in this film. And I think as a trilogy, they're more enjoyable. So, you don't just sleep on it. I know I may not be talking it up in a manner of which it may make it appealing to you, but 18 Bronzemen is a very decent kung fu film. Some people like comedy kung fu. Some people like swords films. Some people like the acrobats, like the Venoms and stuff like that. But traditional kung fu fighters and everything exist in this film. And like I said, with all the familiar faces, you'll understand why I say it's traditional. And don't forget, one of the first Shaolin films out there. There's another film called the Shaolin Temple. That, not to be confused with the Shaw Brothers Shaolin Temple, but this Shaolin Temple was made by this same film company, and there was like a number of stars from Taiwan who played in that film before they became very famous. All worthwhile checking out. But that's about all that I have for you guys on this show, because the 18 Bronzemen is just one of those classics. It's part of the genre, and other films were born of this film. It seems like this film kind of like lit the fuse, and then others picked up the mantle and ran with it. But it's a nice little jewel. Thought I would talk about it and present it to you in a manner of which, for you, those of you who haven't had a chance to check certain fare out. Let's see, we got some more people here. Derek Bailey was asking, is this the 18 Bronzemen with Carter Wong? Yes, it is, Derek Bailey. It definitely is. Drew Titan is out there. He says, Bronx on debt. Salute to you, Drew. How you doing, brother? Michael says, I'm still here. And Jethro Bodine come in. He says, sup, Stormy B, man. I'm about to download it right now. I need a list of your favorite kung fu movies. Wow. Jethro, my list is very vast, man. But I'll tell you something. Why don't you start off with the trilogy here, and we could talk it up on another episode, because the 18 Bronzemen, the 18 Bronzemen Part 2, and the third part of the trilogy is called The Eight Masters. Okay? Those 3 films are pretty good. And they take place in a manner of which it's like they take place where the action teaches you what the Shaolin Temple does in the first film. The second film is about the raid on the Shaolin Temple. Why the villains want to take the people out in the Shaolin Temple. And then the third film is kind of like refugees from the Shaolin Temple and the way that they battle for the honor and the respect and to restore the dynasty that was there before the Qings took over. So that's one of the things I like to watch too, is like how the emperors would try to take the Shaolin disciples out because they didn't want them to teach the villagers and everything how to fight and protect themselves, because weapons were not a premium. So if you learn from Shaolin, you could learn several weapon styles. You could learn how to use your hands and feet, and you would learn how to take it as well as give it. So you were skillful. and you could defeat people. The emperor didn't like that. He was like, we got to stop these people from doing this. Otherwise, they could overthrow the government, if enough of them get together. And that was their thinking. They would really actually think like that. So, yeah. But yeah, man, I'm glad that you brothers have tuned in to hear me talk about this. I don't have to check off right now. If you guys got some questions for me in the chat, if you want to write the questions, I can answer them for you, because this is one of those times like there's not a lot to say about the film other than what I've shared with you. But if you have something that, like Jeffro Bodine was just asking about a list of my favorite films, and man, my personal list would go in easily into, I could do a top 100 up there. I don't have any problem answering them. Stormy B, man, I was hoping to get someone on with me tonight to help me talk about this one, because it's not a lot that I could go in and out on unless I have that banter with someone. But I'm trying not to forget anything too while I got your ear on this. So let's see. Let's see, we got, hey, Kurt, I see you out there. Curtis Anderson has joined us. Kurt, did you want to come on, brother? I already sent the link to you if you wanted to come on. Just check your Gmail. Jeffro Bodine is asking, do you have them on DVD? Yeah, Jeffro Bodine, I have 18 Bronzemen on DVD. I have it on VHS. And I got it on Blu-ray earlier this year. I found it online and I got it on Blu-ray. It doesn't have English subs, the Blu-ray, but I've seen the film enough to know what's going on. But on Blu-ray, it looks pretty darn good. Pretty darn good on Blu-ray. Very nice. Jeffro says the Kung Fu movies. Yeah, man, I got them. I got most of my Kung Fu movies are on DVD. I have a huge assortment of them on Blu-ray. And then, because they're starting to reproduce and remaster a lot of them, they're putting them on Blu-ray. And then I've also my original copies on VHS. I just refuse to throw them away because some of them are so rare. It would be blasphemous to throw your VHSs away and being in the good shape that they're in and everything. That's why I saved a couple of Blu-ray VHS players, which are like DVD VHS combo units. I have like 2 of them that I've saved just so I could be able to play my damn VHS Kung Fu films. Well, lo and behold, we got Kurt Anderson and Kurt Sugar is in here with me to join.
Oh, man, I'm supposed to have been on earlier. My apologies, man. I noticed I've been falling asleep while I'm watching TV like Grandpa Simpson, man. I got to get that beat.
Oh, it's all good. And like I said, it was nothing like it before it. So it was kind of a weird film because it was crudely made, but the intent was good. That's why like the 18 Bronzemen Part 2 is kind of like a better movie. But this one is the reason why the 36 Chambers of Shaolin got made. Because this film brought something new about the Shaolin Temple. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. It had a twist at the end where they rejected him because he was a prince and it was against the rules and I didn't see that one coming. So it had a different type of twist at the end, and I was very surprised when he had the tattoos on his forearms, and they said, "No, you're a prince. You cannot be a member." I love the movie. The movie was different. I like the movie. I like 2 even better. I believe they had a third.
The Eight Masters was the third.
Right. And 18 Bronzemen, was a huge movie in my neighborhood. And you got to understand, predominantly black neighborhoods across the country, we supported these movies, and they became hits like not Mystery Chess Boxing, Five Deadly Venoms and Master Killer. So you can add 18 Bronzemen to the mix, man. I believe his name is Carter Wong. Am I right?
Yes,
Carter Wong, right?
Yeah.
I believe he was in a movie called The Cavalier, if I'm not mistaken.
Carter Wong wasn't in The Cavalier. I'm trying to think of that brother's name that was in The Cavalier. It wasn't Carter Wong, though. But Carter Wong was in... I did run off a few of his films.
Right.
He started out with Golden Harvest with Raymond Chow and Angela Mao over there with Golden Harvest. And he was supposed to be like the young handsome star or whatever, but he didn't take off like that with Golden Harvest for whatever reason. And so when he moved to these Shaolin films, and then later he even began to play villains, it's like that was just a weird stroke of fate for him with his career. But the one thing about him, he was a real martial artist. Carter Wong is like, he was a guy that did Tai Chi Chuan and just some other, I mentioned some other hard iron fist styles. And he's noted for having those severely bruised and calloused knuckles on his hands from the styles that he studied. So, but he didn't do The Cavalier. He did like with Golden Harvest, as I announced these earlier, he did films like Hapkido, When Taekwondo Strikes, the Opium Trail, which is also known as The Deadly China Doll. A lot of films with Angela Mao he started out with. Mm-hmm. And then when he moved on to Shaw Brothers, because he did a few films for Shaw Brothers, he was in films like Marco Polo and the 18 Shaolin Disciples, the Blazing Temple. He did a number of films, Carter Wong. I'm trying to think. If I'm not mistaken, he starred in over like 70 films as an actor.
Mm-hmm.
So he was very prolific, and he was supposed to be in Bruce Lee's Game of Death. The original storyline for Bruce Lee's Game of Death before he passed away was that he was playing a retired martial arts champion who was pulled into this situation to take part in a raid on a temple to recover something from this temple, and he was supposed to be teamed up with 5 guys to go into this temple and try to retrieve this treasure that was guarded on each floor by martial arts experts. And Carter Wong's character that was supposed to play in that with Bruce Lee was supposed to be a student of Bruce Lee's who participated in an earlier raid on the temple, but he escaped with his life, but when he survived, he went mad. And so his character was like in an insane asylum. And before taking part in the raid, Bruce Lee had to go and talk to him and find out as much as he could about the temple. But when he saw how his former student was, gone crazy, he couldn't get much information from him. So that's a little side note of history about something that was supposed to take place, or a collaboration with Carter Wong and Bruce Lee in his Game of Death film. So, what else you want to say on it, Kurt?
Yeah, that's funny you mentioned that. I bought a box set with Bruce Lee movies. When they start selling at Walmart, they have a documentary on the original Game of Death, and that was the plot, what you just mentioned. So that's very interesting because I remember watching that years ago, and I was like, wow. So this is how the original Game of Death supposed to be, and they were showing scenes. It was totally different for what we see now, the Game of Death. It was like a remix version, but yeah. I enjoyed it. And I always enjoy behind the scenes kung fu documentaries for whatever reason, and just to remind people and yourself, there's a hell of a kung fu documentary that's on Netflix, and it goes in deep, so the people will enjoy that. It's called, oh man, it's on Netflix right now. I just saw it a couple of weeks ago. It's brand new. Golden Kick, Iron Kicks and Kung Fu Fist. I can be wrong, but
yeah, that's it, Kurt. Iron Fist and Kung Fu Flicks.
Okay,
yeah, because I picked the DVD up. I finally got the DVD last week in the mail.
Oh wow! Did you see it? Yeah, you didn't get a chance to watch it.
I watched it. Yeah, I watched it like twice already.
I'm a documentary kind of guy, but I was a fan of promotion, and when a movie was coming out, they did the same thing with Five Deadly Venoms and other successful movies, Master Killer, and they did the same thing with 18 Bronzemen.
Yeah. Yeah, this is now I wanted to take a moment because I looked into my, I got some stuff I could look up in research. Now you mentioned the Cavalier. That the one of the funny reasons that you would mention it is because it's another film produced by the Wong International Film Company from Taiwan that made 18 Bronzemen. Again, the director, producer, and writer of the film is Joseph Koo. And it stars a lot of the same people that's in the 18 Bronzemen. So it's like, that's why it's easy to associate Carter Wong with being with the film. You see, because a lot of those same actors and actresses appear in there. And the guy that you were thinking about is not Carter Wong, it's C. Mei Long. And C. Mei Long is a guy, he usually played a co-starring role in a lot of the films. A lot of times he would play a bad guy or whatever. And a lot of the actors and actresses that played in this film are Shaw Brothers bit players too, former Shaw Brothers actors and actresses that, and they are all over the place in this movie. But in Taiwan, see, that's one of the things when Shaw Brothers actors or Golden Harvest actors, when their contracts ran out, because their contracts usually were contracted for 7 years. Okay. When their contracts ran out, if they didn't want to re-up with those companies, they could always go to Taiwan and make independent films where they may not get the same type of salary, but they would have more freedom, meaning that they could play in different type of films and weren't bound by those slave contracts of the studios, the big studios. So that's why a lot of them you will see as they went to the mid to late 70s and early 80s, a lot of those people went over in Taiwan to play in these films.
Right. And I want to say something, speaking of people with contracts and switching movie studios, one of my favorite Kung Fu artists, he was under Joseph Kwa, Lee Yi Min at the tail end of his career. He switched over to Shaw Brothers. He's in Life Gamble. He killed Philip Kwok, that's the lizard, in Five Deadly Venoms. He normally play a young, stupid, good guy, but in that movie he played a mature bad guy. He switched over. But Lee Yi Min was brilliant. He was in Seven Grandmasters and Mystery of Chess Boxing. A whole lot of good Kung Fu films, man. But I was always a big fan of Joseph Kwa. He had Jack Long and Mark Long.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's something else to be noted about those people that you mentioned. Lee Yi Min, Jack Long, and Mark Long, they were a part of that opera troupe that learned martial arts and operatic skills and found themselves in kung fu films as stuntmen early on. And then, like I said, after the death of Bruce Lee, when studios began to look for more talents, these guys got moved into choreographer roles and then before the cameras themselves. And it's funny because when acrobatic martial arts came into play with Yuen Wo-ping taking Jackie Chan and making him a star in the two films, Snake in the Eagle Shadow and Drunken Master after that, other studios were looking for their own type of talent like that. That's where Lee Yin-min came into play and Jack Long and Mark Long, because right around that same time that Jackie caught fire doing that, those studios were able to compete with that type of fare by hiring such good acrobatic guys as those guys. And that's what really began to drive the industry in a new direction, where everybody, it kind of went down, as Jackie had said in an interview after Bruce Lee died, because everybody was trying to do what Bruce Lee was doing. But then here you came with somebody being more innovative and more creative with their action and choreography and adding comedy elements to it, you know, and so it gave you something fresh. And that's where these guys began to thrive under this type of new environment. Now, Jackie became number one because not only did he have the skills and abilities like those guys had with the operatic background, but Jackie was willing to go all out. You understand? Some of those guys like Yi Men, he had a reputation with the ladies. You understand? He thought he was pretty boy, you know, and so when he was around, you know, behind the scenes, that's what he was doing. He was chasing the ladies. You understand? And he never got in trouble a few times. So he never got to where he could be because of that. Then that's when you saw him go over to some of the other studios, because he was just kind of one of those guys that was kind of high risk for the studios for a different reason. Now, Jackie was high risk for studios for the stunts that he performed and everything, damn near killing himself all the time. But Lee Yi-min was like, people wanted to kill Lee Yi-min because he messing with people's wives and stuff. You understand? So that was like another thing right there.
Wow. Well, we just freestyling, but you know, he was really one of my favorites, and along with Shin Quin Tai, you know, the classic movie Three Evil Masters. That's a heck of a movie, man. A heck of a movie. Along with Mortal Kombat, where he usually played a good guy, but in Mortal Kombat he played a very good bad guy. If that makes any sense, you know, he was excellent as the villain, you know. But those are some of my favorite martial artists. And before I got on, I wrote in the chat, not in order, I wrote 5 very good classic kung fu movies: The 10 Tigers of Kwai Tong and Mystery of Chess Boxing. I believe that scene was one of the best. You know, Mark Long and Jack Long going at it. Classic.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing that I've been doing, like with this little show of doing these kung fu film focuses, it's easy to talk about the Shaws because they were so prolific and they dominated, and they did have the class of films. One of the things I was trying to do introducing this show is to talk about some of the independent films and some of the other films that help drive the genre, because it's like some of those are classics, but also some of those are important, like 18 Bronzemen. It's the reason that we ended up getting Shaolin Temple by Chang-Chi, and then also 36 Chambers of Shaolin by Locke Yang. So it's like, you know, knowing that, giving people an opportunity to kind of like, you know, stick their toe in that pool, so to speak. Because when I started doing the Shaw stuff, you know, that's what people gonna be on. You know what I mean? It's like, boom, that's going because they're so prolific. and they dominated the industry. But some of these independents are so good. Like there's one I wanted to do, and I haven't done it yet, on a Chow Yun Fat and Lau Kao Yang vehicle called The Postman Strikes Back. Have you ever heard of that one, Kurt?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That's a great film. And some people think that maybe, Chow Yun Fat was never in Kung Fu movies. But he was. And he was in that one. You understand? And that was like, I think, 1980 that Postman Fights Back. But, doing stuff like, because it's like I said, we could talk about the Golden Harvest stuff. We could talk about the Shaw Brothers stuff. And that's what people will really know. But some of these other things, they're very much gems. I heard it mentioned in the chat by, what's that? Nkosi Joseph said, best Carter Wong film is Born Invincible. It's hard to disagree because Born Invincible is a popular Carter Wong film. People love that movie, but that's an independent film, again, made by this company. So it's like, it's great to see that people have even touched on some of those because, again, that's what really drives the genre. Sometimes when you could go to these theaters and you see these films and you be like, man, who is that dude? And it's like, it's just flipping and acrobatics and just, John Liu, guys like that, Wong Ching Lee, these guys were awesome, man. And they could really do it. They could do it off screen. Hustler Slim is out there in the chat. He says, Curtis Anderson, is it anything you don't know something about? He say, the man is a walking hard drive. I haven't seen anyone who has your type of memory. Blessing, true blessing. Yeah.
Hey, Hustler Slim, thanks a lot, man. You know what it is, man? I just I like to be entertained. I soak up knowledge. I can't touch Stormy and martial arts. Stormy is like, the man is a hard drive. He know the backstory, and I know a lot, but I don't know as much as he do. But I have a collection, a healthy collection of kung fu films, and now I'm buying them off YouTube movies. You can buy them for like $3 or $4. I mean, can you imagine where you could watch kung fu films on your phone? So I've been buying a lot of them off YouTube, and digital, on the go, or, I still got to have a DVD player while I watch them. But, thanks a lot, Hustler Slim, man. I just like talking about certain things like boxing and kung fu movies and old movies, Steve McQueen movies and Frank Sinatra and Von Ryan's Express. I grew up with this stuff as a kid, so it just stuck to me like fly paper.
Yeah, man. That's just like today, Kurt, I got in the mail 3 Shaw Brothers films. I got three on Blu-ray. I got The Kid with the Tattoo, The Rebel Intruders, and The Champion. Now, The Champion is a basher from, I'm trying to think of what, I have to look the year up because I don't have the year. But it's a Shaw Brothers flick starring Chen Han and Shi Su. Shi Su is like one of Shaw's early young ladies that they wanted her to be like Angela Mao, know. And Chen Han was like one of Shaw's regular actors who they would put in action films. So he wasn't a martial artist or nothing, but he was like one of their screen idols. So in the 60s, he did spy movies and stuff like that. So in the 70s, when the Kung Fu film craze took off, they put him in that. And I'll tell you a film that you would know him in. He was one of the 2 brothers in Sacred Knives of Vengeance. He was the kind of pudgy, he was the kind of pudgy face guy in Sacred Knives of Vengeance. That was Chen Han. But see, that's what I'm talking about. Knowing these people, these personalities, and what they do on screen and everything. But I got those 3 in the mail today, bro, on Blu-ray. And I'm telling you, the Shaws remastered on Blu-ray are excellent, man.
If you're a kung fu purist like yourself, enthusiast, to get these kung fu movies on Blu-ray is a dream because one thing that was criticized with Kung Fu movies on VHS was the very, very poor quality. If you got a clear copy, consider yourself lucky. And to see these movies being remastered and Blu-ray is a thing of beauty. It really is a thing of beauty. Who's the guy? I forgot his name, Stormy, and Five Super Fighters, the bad guy.
Oh man, I'm trying to think of that dude's name. Damn, what is that dude's name?
Because he said the most gangster thing I ever heard in my life. He was going around. What made this movie unique, it wasn't revenge. He just wanted to start trouble. He was going to schools, and the guy said, "Why are you starting trouble?" He said, "Why are you here?" He said, "I'm here to correct your Kung Fu." So the teacher said, "Where are you from?" And he looked, and he said, "I'm from a place called hell."
Yeah.
Man, I died, man.
I'm trying to
that
think.
Movie, yeah, I'm sorry.
I looked him up. That's Quan Fang. His name is Quan Fang.
Quan Fang.
Yeah.
You know, he is a hell of a martial artist, man. You know, and you know, these guys, man. But my favorite, you know, the Venoms. I'm just in love with all those guys, man. Philip Kwok and, you know, Sun Chien and Lo Mang and all of them. You know, but you know, the Venoms are my best. But Five Super Fighters is a classic Kung Fu movie. The fight scenes are great, spectacular.
Yes. And you remember that guy in Drunken Master that Jackie was going back to the master? He had bought some wine and he came across that guy that could fight with the sticks, and he had another rematch with him and he beat him real bad and he made him push his face in some mess, you know. Remember that?
Yes.
Well, that guy is the choreographer for Five Super Fighters. Now, see how good these guys are? That guy was just playing a little role in Jackie Chan's Drunken Master in that scene that I was just talking about. His name is Shu Sha. He played in Secret Rivals. He played in Secret Rivals Part 2. You know, it's like he played in Dance of the Drunken Madness. You know, these guys, they're so skilled that even when you see them, it's like they're better, you know, than what you think they are. You know, they are better. That's just like he was also, Shu Sha was in what's that? Dragon Fist, which I did a review on. He's the one that played Jackie Chan's teacher that got killed at the beginning. Mm-hmm. And then Jackie Chan went on that mission with the mistress and his sister from the school to go find the dude that killed him. Right. You know, these guys are awesome, man.
They are, man. I respect them, man. I appreciate them. You know, I could look at the same movie 100 times and you would have thought that was my first time seeing it. I mean, I love those guys, man. And Wilson Tong is excellent, you know, a martial artist as well as producing. And he was great in Eight Daggers. I love that fight scene in Eight Daggers. You know, I mean, I just love these guys, man, in all the movies, you know, but Ten Tigers of Kwai Tong with Tai Lung is an excellent movie. What's his name, man? Silver Spear and I'm forgetting everything. Silver Spear and the kid with the golden arm, who plays an excellent bad guy because he's calm. He has a very calm manner, but his agenda is to kill you by any means necessary. Remember, I remember he had the weapon, and he was like, you know, do you want to challenge me? And the guy says yes, and he says, that's a very good man right there.
I know, right?
Very, very calm demeanor. You know, he was the centipede and Five Deadly Venoms. I'm forgetting these guys' names. I knew these guys' name like it was my own. Anyway,
the centipede was Wei Pai.
Wei Pai, yeah, Wei Pai.
No.
Lo Ming. Lo Mein. That's
Lo
the snake,
Mein.
Wei Pai. Right.
Centipede
Right.
was Wei Pai was the snake.
You know, and my two friends used to argue about was they the same person. I used to tell them, yeah, he just has a beard. So, or girlfriend was like, no, they're different. I'm like, Sal, that's the same guy. He just have a beard. That's it, you know. But anyway, he always played an excellent bad guy because he wasn't vicious on the outside, but that was his agenda to kill you. But he was always calm. He fed you. He gave you wine. He gave you wisdom. But at the end of the day, he wanted to kill you. Oh,
yeah.
Man.
Yeah, I'm going to take it to the chat for a moment. Jethro Bodine says, yeah, I'm trying to build my collection on my hard drive. Yeah, man, that's what you do. But you know what? I like physical media, Jethro. That's what I like, man. That's why I could go and pull out one of my discs, you know, and it's like, man, I'm ready to roll. Lala D says, Hyphy knows a lot too. Yeah, that's true, Lala D. And she says, Derek Bailey too. And Nkosi Joseph says, oh, the best Carter Wong film is Born Invincible. Okay, I went back a little bit. Let's see. I want to bring it up. And Derek Bailey says, Shaw Brothers made some of the best movies around. Yes, they did, man. They did. Lala D is laughing. She says, yeah, Stormy giving the inside politics about martial arts. I'm like, what the? She's laughing. And Hustler Sim says, Stormy B-Man say those martial arts stars' names so well, I'm starting to think that the B-Man is bilingual. He's thinking. And Kelsey Joseph says, I remember when I was a child, I loved watching these movies. Kids today will never experience the greatness. Absolutely, man. You are 100% correct. When we went to those movies as kids, man, we would come out like we had just seen something for the first time and was enjoying it so much. We was trying to recreate the action, trying to do the moves. We were trying to jump on top of stuff to make it like we was jumping high in the air like these guys. Man, it's like the whole experience of Kung Fu movies being introduced to the black community, man. It's like there's nothing like that. Nothing like that. That these guys today, they don't know the joy that we got from that.
Absolutely, man. I mean, it was a godsend growing up in those days and having, you know, Kung Fu movies in the era and great music and boxing. Everything just worked hand in hand. We just knew as kids how to have fun. So growing up, you know, going to the movie theaters, man, it was a huge deal back in the day. That's when neighborhoods stuck together. And I'm not saying gangs, neighborhood, where we played softball, baseball, and basketball. And then everybody wrestled up some money from their parents. And we was unified as a neighborhood. And we all walked to the movie theater, the same movie theater I saw my first boxing match, closed circuit, Ali and Foreman, was the same movie theater, the Fabian movie theater in Patterson, New Jersey. I used to see all the Kung Fu movies. And it was just a great experience, man, where you can grow up and look back on your childhood, man. And sometimes, man, I get real emotional about it because I never thought in a million years things would be this bad. I guess because I'm older and I'm 53, but I have a habit. The older I get, I go back and relive my childhood days. I mean, my older sister, Anita, you know, she used to be, I mean, a whole block. We used to walk together to the movie theater where the older kids looked out for the younger kids, man. It was a beautiful thing before the crack epidemic hit, and it's very sad. You know, I really do get teary-eyed sometimes when I think about it, you know, and coming home to a rice and pepper steak dinner with my mother before she passed. But it was you know, I collect these movies, Stormy and Chat, because I can feel the sentimental value of what it used to be growing up as a kid. When I look at these guys, you know, and I know their names, that's when I knew. I was like, man, I really love martial arts. I used to go to Chinatown at the Bowery movie theater and watch these movies, you know, and it was just great growing up, man. So I just wanted to reflect on it.
Man, you know what you were saying just made me think about what I think I'm gonna do for my next show, Kurt, and you got to be a part of it.
Yes, sir.
The next show, next Kung Fu film focus I'm gonna do, I'm gonna step outside of the box, and I'm gonna do The Last Dragon, bro.
I knew you was gonna say that.
You did?
Yes, I did. I'm being honest. And I'm gonna say before the show, but I met him about 4 years ago when I went to a Golden Glove boxing match on 42nd Street in Manhattan. But I'll say that for that show.
Okay. Yeah, man, because that, you know what? That's a part of this, a tremendous part of it, because that film right there is like an ode to the Kung Fu film genre and how it took to us from our perspective. You know what I'm saying? It's like it's like Jim Kelly, Ron Van Cleef, you know, those brothers, they would not have had the success that they did have if it weren't for us, because we supported that genre. You know, when Jim Kelly was making Black Samurai and Hot Potato, we was there. And then when Ron Van Cleef was making Way of the Black Dragon, you know what I'm saying? Dude, it's like that stuff is a part of this genre. That is a huge part.
Oh, and Carl Scott too.
Carl Scott, yeah. I'm sorry, I was just about to say his name. Yeah. So, you know, that man, that's just, yeah, I think that's what the next Kung Fu film focus will be, because we need to help keep that whole element of that alive by talking about it again and having people go and revisit it. You know, Hustler Slim said, "Hell yeah, Bruce Leroy." Yeah, right. And Lala D says, "Oh wow." Yeah, you know, it's like that's a piece of history. And you said something a moment ago that made me think that about that film, because that's one of the most successful films that they never tried to make a sequel or anything to. And they had the people that could do it and everything. For so many years, a lot of those people were still around. Unfortunately, my man that played the Shogun of Harlem, you know, he's not around no more. Is that the brother that played Candyman too, right? You there, Kurt? Yeah, I think that's the dude that played Candyman that was in there. So
you there, Stormy?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay.
I couldn't hear you for a moment though.
Oh wow, I don't know what happened.
No, I was saying the brother that played Shogun, isn't he the brother that played Candyman too?
Nah, the brother that played Candyman, he was that's Tony Todd. But the Shogun died like about 3 years ago.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say, because the guy that played Shogun died. But they could have made a sequel to that, man. That movie was so much fun, man. I remember when we saw it at the theater, it was like a good time. You know, it's like, but it was, even though it had Kung Fu in there, even though the basis was Bruce Leroy and his love for Bruce Lee and all of that, it was like, it was so many other things wrapped up into one, wasn't it? It was like, you remember this movie, Kurt? Thank God It's Friday.
Oh man, that's a classic.
Right? Now, tell me,
that's a classic.
Didn't that have elements of that in it too? It's like, it's just, man, The Last Dragon was something else, man. That's probably the best thing Barry Gordy ever did in his life.
You had elements. You had the sex symbols, which was Tama. Women went crazy over him, and then you had the singer. I'm forgetting so many names, man. You know who I'm talking about.
DeBarge.
The female. the girl.
Oh, the Vanity.
She was eye candy for the men. But when they showed that scene with the barge, the women went crazy. They were screaming and falling. Now I was
that was the height of light skin. You know that was. that was the height of light skin right there. It was like light skinned niggas was born like crazy during that era.
I'll never forget it, man. It was fun. It was a light-hearted movie that certain movies, no matter over the top or whatever, it has a light-heartedness to it. You just go and enjoy it with your popcorn. Certain movies are like that. I remember movies like Benji about the little dog and Thank God It's Friday and Julius Erving was in a movie called The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh.
You know?
Movies like that, you just went and you rooted for your guy. The black exploitation movies, you rooted for all of them because they had, and most of them did Kung Fu. Some of them did Kung Fu and you Jim Brown and Jim Kelly and Fred Williamson. It was just so much fun seeing people that you could relate to.
Yeah, Hustler Sim says, quote, "Can you teach me some moves?"
Yeah, he acted all shy. That was classic. I like that. Yeah, I really did, man.
Dude, that was such a fun time. But you know what? How about this, Kurt? We revisiting it. Well, we should save that for that show because, I wanted to say one more thing about the 18 Bronzemen. You know, how it set the trend for the Shaolin training films because, you know, there were films that came after it, but even the sequels that they made were better than the original. So that's what I'm trying to hint on that we didn't get with The Last Dragon. But I wanted to say 18 Bronzemen introduced that whole thing about training in the temple, going through these trials, of endurance and strength and this and that, to get out of there. That became something that was a part of almost every Shaolin movie after that. Some films did it better than others, but we have to acknowledge that 18 Bronzemen was the first. It was the first to do that. And I am so glad that I had that chance to see that film first, because what came after it, it's like, wow, but I'm just trying to get the people that's listening to understand how important it is for a film like that when it comes out, and there was nothing like that before.
Absolutely. That's a very good point, because it opened the doors and it set the trend. You knew about the training regimen, but more importantly, how strict they were. They had morals and values. They can pick and choose a student, the monks. It was a hierarchy, everything, and they gave you first dibs, because the Shaolin Temple, they had a secrecy about it, so when that movie was made, it kind of opened the doors, and then Master Killer followed it, and so that's a very good point you brought up. That movie really was very significant when it came to the Shaolin Temple.
Yeah, there are some there's some great points that are established with that, and like I said, others came along after and built on that and did it better or whatever. But that's pretty good stuff there. Nkosi Joseph says those movies were so good and it did not have no, what's that SJW crap? What is the SJW? Stormy is kind of slow on some of these acronyms, man.
SJW. SJW. I don't know.
Somebody could put it in the chat for me, so it just helped me bring me up to date because I'm a little slow with these things. Jupiter B says, salute Stormy B, man. And Jupiter, we got Kurt on here with us tonight too, Kurt Sugar. Jeffro Bodine says, what are some other good directors other than the Shaw brothers? Well, when you say directors, are you talking about the directors of the film, or are you talking about the studios that produce the films? I know you use the word directors because the director of this film in particular, Joseph Koo, he made so many films out of Taiwan, and he worked with so many stars. I mean, like we mentioned Jack Long earlier. Jack Long, to me, was always best when he was playing an older master, wasn't he, Kurt? When he was just playing a young guy, he just was basic. But when he took on the role of, like, he was playing Pai Mei, the priest in Seven Grandmasters, and he was excellent in Seven Grandmasters. Seven Grandmasters is one of the greatest martial art films of all times. And I did do a review on that. So if you guys check my archive, I did do a review on Seven Grandmasters. Go ahead, Kurt.
Why didn't you kill him? Why didn't you? What I showed you. Who taught you that? The Pomade strikes. I mean, the plot is just excellent, man. I could watch that movie all day, man. I can watch that movie, rewind and watch it back to back, if that makes any sense, man. And the other one, what's the movie he played? He fought Mark Long again, and then another master interrupted him, and what's the damn movie when the woman fell off the cliff? Dance of the what was it? Not Dance of the Drunken Master. I get them mixed up. World of Drunken Master. There you go.
Yeah.
Remember that one, World of Drunken Master. And I love when he do the drunken technique. He was at his best. I always did like Joseph Kwa movies, man. I thought he was excellent. Along with Shang-Chi and the rest, man. But it's just. Every time I talk to you about Kung Fu movies, you make me want to see one, man. I might watch one tonight.
Yeah, man. And I'll tell you something. It's like when you talk about those films in particular, and you see the performances. There was what is that doggone film? I'm gonna look it up real quick because I watched. Let's see. Let's see. Got people here. I'm trying to. My man Jack Long. He played in a film.
But Stormy, they wasn't brothers, right? Mark Long and Jack Long?
No, they're not. They just they just said those last names, and they took on the American first names just to make it easier for them to be distinguished in the industry, because a lot of them, when they would use their natural nationality names, there were a lot of people by that name, and so they would use these American names. But there's a film that he did back in 1979, Jack Long, that when he wasn't playing a young guy, and it's a classic to me. The film is called The Boxer's Adventure. You ever see that, Kurt?
I don't think I saw that one.
The Boxer's Adventure stars Jack Long, Meng Fei, and Blackie Ko, and also what's his name? Tan Tao Lang. And in the Boxer's Adventure, they're like three guys. They're buddies. One gambles, one likes the ladies, and then Jack Long's character, they call him a Nancy boy, which is like a fag, right? And in that film, he's like, always It's funny. You have to see it for yourself, but he's always like flipping his hair and stuff like a woman, right? And then he's real neat with his clothes and stuff. And they tease him, you know, they like, you're just a Nancy boy. And when they call him a Nancy boy, he goes into a rage. He wants to fight everybody and everything, you know. But they have to team up. And Tan Tao Lang is playing this chief officer that's using them to about it. Is like every time they come around Jack Long and they call him a Nancy boy, he go to flying into these fits and start whooping everybody's ass. But the movie is pretty good. And you know, like I said, it's got what the fuck? It's like but it's for comedy, you know. It's so funny. That movie is a trip, and it's got great kung fu action in it. It's called The Boxer's Adventure. But that's what I one recommendation I wanted to throw out there.
Boxer Revenge. I'm gonna look at that. But remember, Stormy, they snuck some kind of gay scenes in certain movies. Like one of my favorite movies was the first 3D kung fu movie, I believe. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Dynasty in Blood, starring Tao Tao Lang, where Chief Chow was the villain, and he called one of his many generals in the room, and they sat on the bed, and then when they came up, he had his hand on his shoulder. It freaked me out. It freaked me out as a kid.
Yeah, and Dynasty, what is that called again?
Dynasty in Blood.
Dynasty in Blood. I think that's the one that was in 3D, is it? Because there was
yes, you're right.
Okay, yeah, because that was like the first kung fu movie in 3D or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember, he took off his outfit and used it as a weapon, as a boomerang. And It was nice how they did it, man. It went around. It looked like it was coming towards you.
Yeah.
Then it boomerang towards him. So, you know, I got that. Matter of fact, I do have that in my collection. But I love Tao Tao Lang. He always played a cop or some kind of secret agent. Seemed, you know, investigating everything, you know. But he's an excellent footmaster. Excellent.
Yeah, he's the one that trained John Liu, you know. And dude, he even to this day he's still going strong. Tan Tao Lang. Nkosi Joseph says those movies were so good it did not. Okay, I read that one already. And he also says Return of the Bronzemen, was that part 2? There's also a Bronzemen movie. Yeah, 18 Bronzemen Part 2 is basically the name for it. The second film. And then the third one is The Eight Masters. Jupiter B says, salute Kurt. And Kosi Joseph says, 36 Deadly Styles. Mark Long and Jack Long fought in that movie. Yep, that's a good one as well. Jupiter B says, I love Kung Fu movies. Golden Harvest, Shaw Brothers was the shit. We used to have a channel in Chicago that had Samurai Sundays. My mother would make it a routine to watch that after church. All right. Hey, Jupiter B, you in Chicago? So am I, man. I remember them Samurai Sundays, man. They used to always use Shaw Brothers film clips. I forget who that was. What's our guy from Koshu from the Venoms in Marco Polo when he did that flying move off the wall and he
Lou, Japanese, was an excellent Heroes from the East.
Oh, Karada, Karada.
Oh, that's my dude right there. I love that dude Karada, man. Oh man, I'm a huge fan of his. You know, was John Chang Chinese or Indonesian? Stormy.
That is a good question, man. Because I got the sneaky feeling that he could have been something else. Because he sure looked like it, didn't he? Yeah,
I like him, though. Eagles Killer and, you know, other movies I like. I always played a good guy. But I always wondered, because I looked at him, I said, I wonder if he's Chinese or not. You know, but Karada is my dude, man. I love Karada. You know, in Heroes of the East, he was excellent.
Yes, sir. And Kosi Joseph says, Five Deadly Venoms, Shaolin Temple, White Lotus, Crippled Avengers are classics from Shaw Brothers. And Kosi Joseph, let me tell you this, man. The Shaws have approximately, I want to say maybe about 600 plus Kung Fu films. Okay? So just trying to name a couple of them off, bro. You leaving a lot off the list. And that's no disrespect. It's just like, that's one of the reasons why I didn't start off talking about Shaw films when I started doing the Kung Fu film focus, because they're there. And I am not disrespecting them or anything. I eventually will get to them. But there are so many of them that they will just trample the rest of the genre if you just talked about the Shaws. The stuff that we're sharing with you tonight, the films that Kurt dropped, the films that I'm dropping, it's like that stuff is good fare as well. Does it measure up to Shaw? Probably not. But that doesn't mean it's not good and not entertaining. Because some of the best films in the martial art genre are films that were made by independent companies, because they didn't have big budgets for sets and stuff like that. So what drove their films was the choreography and the actors and fighters who could do the fighting on screen. Wouldn't you agree with that, Kurt? That's where they made their hay, with that. Two guys meeting on the countryside, breaking out. So it's you. And then they get to fighting. And next thing you know, they throwing down, man. And that's just the opening of the movie. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. One of the best fight scenes, and this says a lot, and I don't know what company, but I'm just saying fight scenes, was 60-Second Assassin.
Yep.
At the very end, when they jumped up and you get and you see blood come down and it ends just like that. I love that.
Yep. That was excellent, man. That's one of them films that opened with the scene that I'm talking about. Minute Fong was in the water swimming and the guy was near the shore walking, and Minute Fong came up on the shore. He put his clothes on and put his watch on, because he would always look at his watch and set it, because he was the 60-second assassin. And the guy walked up to him and he was like, Minute Fong. And then they just break out and start fighting. It was like first 5 minutes of the movie, man. I was like, shoot, that's the best stuff right there.
Yep. Those independent films, they got right to the point, and it worked. It worked. Excellent fight scenes, man. Beardy, man. Oh, he was such a good actor, man. Thunder and Mantis, he went crazy, turned into a real mantis. Dude. And what movie was that when he ate the guy?
That was Thunder and Mantis.
Thunder and Mantis. I said, damn.
He freaking ate Philip Coffey at the end of the movie when he was fighting him, and he broke him down so bad that he couldn't move and everything. And then he dragged him behind that curtain. Man, dude.
That dude was bad, boy. Beardy.
Another film that had a great opening was, it just was on the tip of my tongue. Snake Deadly Act with Wilson Tong.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you rape somebody's wife?
Yep. Dude, that's
a movie that I like. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm so excited.
That kind of stuff is just great. I like. Go ahead.
Superpowers is a very underrated movie, because normally that guy, the star, the bad guy, he played a good guy in most movies. He was in Five Super Fighters and Snake in the Monkey Shadow. But in Superpowers, he had martial arts sons fight against each other, because I loved that scene when they was at the table, and he was like, my father with his leopard style was a tough old fella, and he caused dissension amongst the sons of the great Kung Fu masters. I love that movie.
Yeah, man. That's another great film. And see, like I said, we're talking about films that are not Shaw Brothers films. And this is no slight at Shaw, because Shaw did it the best. But you have to understand, it's like this. prime rib is what it is, right? You could go out and have it for dinner, this and that or whatever. But that doesn't mean there aren't some places that can make some damn good rib tips. You understand? So that's basically what I'm trying to share with that, because we gonna get to it all, but it's a slow burn. You know, it's a marathon. It's not a race. You know, so it's like that's what I want people to understand. There are so many classics out there, man. So many. And I'll tell you something. I came into, you know, there's a site called 36 Chambers. It's a Kung Fu fandom, where these guys, you know, it's a website. It's all about Kung Fu. They sell t-shirts, all of this stuff. But the greatest thing, they have a forum on there. And there's a community like we have our boxing community. They go on there and talk about Kung Fu movies, you know, 24/7, 365. And you can find out so many. And I found out, this was about 10 years ago now, because I've been on that site for a long time, that they called hand-to-hand films bashers in the early 70s, where they didn't use weapons and stuff, and they was just doing the swingy arm Kung Fu style and throwing their legs at each other and stuff. It was before Bruce Lee came along. And those bashers, some of those are pretty damn good. You know what I mean? And it's like, but you just have to look through the fare, find out what you like. And I found out that I'm a big fan of bashers. And those kind of films, they're very entertaining. They come up with some weird stuff sometimes, and the special effects are a little crude, but it's like, man, but they help make up everything else. Jimmy Wong Yu doesn't get the credit that he deserves because Bruce Lee came along. But Jimmy Wong Yu has to be one of the most creative and innovative actors, directors that the Kung Fu film genre ever produced, man. When he came up with that film, The Chinese Boxer, that kicked off the hand-to-hand fighting wave. You know, that kicked that off. But he didn't just stop there. He started doing other stuff, like his film Master of the Flying Guillotine, or The One-Armed Boxer Part 2. The music selections and stuff that he put in there and the sound effects, it was something never heard. He had this weird, what did they used to call that music, Kurt? With the weird thumping sound, and it's like all that was like The One-Armed Boxer. That music was in there, and he mixed it all up. And the film that he did before The One-Armed Boxer, Blood of the Dragon, it had a little bit of that in it too. So it's like Jimmy Wong Yu was like really creative, man. You could actually say the tournament films came because of Jimmy Wong Yu. You know? So it's like the tournaments, the whole thing, fighting all them guys, and some of the characters that he had in his Kung Fu movies in the tournaments, they appeared on video games. Like the Indian guy that could stretch his arms out and shit. It's like, I saw that on a video game. I was like, man, that's from the One-Armed Boxer, Master of the Flying Guillotine. So see how, influential it was on, society. It's like somebody saw that movie as a kid, and when they grew up and started doing video software, they was like, I'm going to put this guy I seen in a Kung Fu movie in here. They started doing,
they said that. Yeah, they said that. This, like I said, Kung Fu movies and black exploitation movies was the thing when you was a kid growing up in the 70s and 80s. One-Armed Boxer and Triple Irons, with David Chang, and Seven Blows of the Dragon, My Dear Auntie, and Kiss Me. What's the name of the movie? As a female star. Anyway, those movies were very influential in my life, man.
Yeah. Absolutely, man. Absolutely. But this is what it's about, man. And for people who want to come on this channel when I'm doing these shows and you want to revisit revisit that genre and talk about these films, you guys, you could always come in here and drop the titles and we could have them for future shows and stuff like that, because that's what it's about. You know, that's just what it's about. I think that there's such a vast library, even for everybody out here that's talking. Like Jupiter says he likes kung fu movies, Jeffro says it, and Kosi Joseph says it. You know, everybody. Lala D is out there. You know, respect to Lala D. Everybody that's in the chat pretty much have professed to love these films. Hustler Slim. But do yourself a favor. When we mention a title that you don't know, write it down and go check it out anyway. There's a great Wu-Tang channel on YouTube. You can pull some of these up. Some of these films are on Amazon now, Amazon Prime. You can watch them. Some of them are even on Netflix. But just do yourself a favor and go out there and check out some of this fare, because I'm guaranteeing that you'll see or run across something, you'll be like, damn, I didn't know this is tight. I like this. Next thing you know, you'll be looking for that actor or whoever in another film or whatever, you know, and that's how it goes. You could, you know, the Shaws, that they were the biggest film company in the East. But a lot of those film companies that were way down underneath the umbrella of Shaws, man, they put out some excellent fare. And you're doing yourself a disservice if you haven't bothered to check it out. These films, like Kirk mentioned, Lee Yee Min and Jack Long and Mark Long and those guys. Wong Ching Lee, you know, those guys like that. You know, there's so much to treat yourself to. Kurt, you got any last words that you want to talk about? Anything you want to say?
Yeah, there's one movie, because I'm a Wing Chun guy. There's one movie that I love, man. That's a classic that nobody talks about, called The Prodigal Son. Oh, I love that movie. Oh, man, I love that movie. You know, because, well, I ain't going to give it away. I'm just going to say, we'll talk about it, but that's another movie you guys should look at, The Prodigal Son, because I love Wing Chun. But, this was a great live stream, man. And, you know, people think I have this mystic memory. And to be honest, Stormy, my memory is not that good, but it may, to the naked eye, may seem like that. You know, it's not, because I don't forget my childhood, how I grew up, and I appreciate it and respect it. And boxing and kung fu and the black exploitation movies, I lived through it. It burns in my soul. So I won't forget it. I can never forget it. You know, movies like Johnny Tough, and you may not know that one, people, you know, about a bad little kid. You know, I think it was based in Chicago, if I'm not mistaken, The Education of Sonny Carson. But, you know, that's for another show. Hey, chat, thanks for spending time with us and talking about Kung Fu. You know, I love it, man. I love Kung Fu. And thanks, Stormy, for inviting me on. And we'll do another installment later on. You know, hey, it's been great, man. It's been great.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Aladdin Sandam, I see you out there. And Derek Bailey, bet that you can email me some titles. I'll do some breakdowns on them. I ain't got no problem with that. So yeah, I want to say shout out to the LDBC and thank you for everyone who decided to come out and support me on this stream this evening. This has been another Kung Fu Film Focus, the 18 Bronzemen, or also known as the 18 Bronzemen of Shaolin, film that was made in 1976. A very good martial arts film that introduced the whole aspect of martial arts training inside the Shaolin Temple. Christopher Journay has joined in. Christopher, we're about to sign off, bro, but you can catch us on the archive.